PEO Production, in conjunction with WSTA Radio, presents
Decision 2012. Live video and live radio on WSTA Radio. You don't miss the candidates as they debate the issues live on radio and on the internet. Broadcast live on WSTA Radio October 9th, 10th, and 11th, beginning at 10 a.m. to 12 noon and from 12:30 until 2 p.m. Originating from the Wynwood Passage Hotel, hear the candidates' views that are running for the office of Delegate to Congress. Delegate Donna Christensen, Norma Picard-Samuel, Warren Mosler, and Harlan Redfield. Senator-at-large candidates, Senator Craig Baxter and Wilmer Monsanto.
Senatorial candidates, Shirley Sadler, Cecilia Emanuel, Kent Bernier, Clarence Payne, Horace T. Brooks, Clifford Graham, Jeanette Millen-Young, Myron Jackson, Stephen Smokey Fret, Paul Alexander, Alma Francis Heiliger, Sean Georges, Alvin Foy Sr., Tregenza Roach, Marvin Blyden, Donald Cole, Senator Sean Michael Malone, Lawrence Olive, and Joseph Wojo Gums.
live video streaming on Lucky13WSTA.com and FocusVI.com.
It's all live here on WSTA Radio. Brought to you in part by Furniture Inn, Innovative, Lisa Melchior, Mega Mix Production, T's Chicken Fry Restaurant, MDM Entertainment, Furniture Plus, Colormax, WSTA Radio, and IQ Events Group.
Decision 2012, bringing the candidates to you on primetime.
Radio on WSTA 1340 AM on our websites, www.lucky13WSTA.com and www.focusvi.com. We want to welcome you to Decision 2012. It's a PEO production in conjunction with WSTA Radio. And what we're doing is bringing the candidates to you, the people out there who are on the internet and those who just have an AM radio. We just want to bring it to you. We have, it's a question and answer. We have two panelists here today, but we're working with three. We have three of the candidates vying for the delegate's position, and we want to welcome them. They will have a 2-minute introduction piece that, well, let's go over the rules. And we're going to introduce our panelists. We have former senator, principal, commissioner of education, former Senator Liston Davis. We also have with us former Senator at Large, Senate President Alamndo Rocky Liburd. They will be asking questions today. Our panelists consist of Delegate Donna Christensen, candidate Harlan Redfield, and candidate Norma Picard-Samuel. We want to start it off simply because it's a 2-hour segment. We're going to just go around and ask questions. We're not going to ask the same questions. We have enough time to spread it out. We're going to start with our delegate. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To Decision 2012. Tell us briefly in 2 minutes, introduce yourself.
Yes. Well, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. I am Donna Christensen. I am number 2 on the ballot, and it has been my pleasure and my honor to serve the people of this territory as your delegate to Congress for the past 16 years. My tenure in Congress has been extraordinarily effective and productive. Over the years, we have brought hundreds of millions of new dollars into the territory, included the territory in programs for which they had never been included before, have given opportunities to hundreds of young people through internships, scholarships, and other programs, and successfully addressed many of our challenges. But I am aware of the fierce urgency of now. We are in a crisis. We are hurting. And we're fearful for the future. And although I have worked on many of the issues that present the particular challenges today, whether it's been WAPA, energy, healthcare, or any of the other challenges, our offices have been addressing these challenges today as the emergency that they are. And so we have been working assiduously with the White House, Departments of Agriculture, Department of Energy and Interior, as well as Health and Human Services, to begin to explore every possibility for lowering the LEAC, which has recently been increased to an unsustainable level. to also address the health insurance premiums that are putting an unfair burden on our retirees and our seniors, and to address many of the other challenges. My dear friends, there is no way that an independent candidate can help to address the issues and the challenges that we face. And the Republican agenda does not address our needs. And so I'm asking for your support once again. I'm a Democrat. I have the support and the endorsement of our president, who will win this next election. And I also have the seniority, the relationships, and the influence that is required, especially in this time of crisis. And so I thank you for the opportunity to serve you. I look forward and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Again, I am Donna Christensen, number 2 on the ballot. For tested, trusted, and true leadership, vote for me.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Second candidate, Holland Redfield. 2 minutes.
Thank you, and a very good morning. First, let me start off by thanking Lucky 13 for putting this forum on. It is critical. And a pleasant good morning to each and everyone that is either listening to this broadcast on the internet or listening to it on the radio. My name is Holland Redfield, and I served in the legislature for 6 terms. Prior to that, I was chairman of the Public Service Commission. And in my first term, I created a position with a rule change of creating a position of liaison to the White House, which gave me a tremendous amount of experience, particularly working with the executive branch. I served under Bush 1 and Bush 2. Each and every one of you out there clearly understand how serious these problems are. You're feeling them every day. There's a tremendous sense of hopelessness and helplessness in this community. That was one of the reasons that I decided to run. I've been out of public office for many years. It was not an easy decision. The decision was based on, one, this community has been very generous to me, and it is a very loving community, and a community that needs help desperately. We've been running a structural deficit for over 30 years. It's been going on and on. Combined with the national economy, which has crashed, we're talking about, to compare it with the 1929 crash. And then you combine it with the energy issue here in the Virgin Islands. We're in a perfect man-made storm. A storm that was made by man can be solved by man. One of the major issues that I see in this, one, is a delegate is running on her record. We're not running for President of the United States. Neither one of us aren't. And I'm running on what I plan to do for you. The major thrust of my strategy would be to sensitize those in Washington that we are Americans. And I'm looking for at least parity. Many of the issues that we've been dealing with have been easy ones up until this time. The ability to work across the aisle is essential. I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't believe that the Republicans are going to maintain control of the Congress. So I'm in that group. There are those that say by being a moderate Republican, you cannot exist up there. I give ulcers, I don't get them. When it comes to the Virgin Islands, number one, my party comes second, and your interests come first. So I'm asking you for your support. We're going to get into much dialogue during this debate here.
Thank you.
I ask each and every one of you to listen to it. It's essential. And listen to the candidates and listen to our solutions. Remember, we're Americans.
Thank you, candidate Holland Redfield. Our third candidate Norma Picard-Samuel. 2 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you. It's a pleasure being here. I waited for this for a very long time. You know, either you have it or you don't. You know, listening to everything that's going on in our community, it's hard to believe the things you hear and advertisements on the radio and on TV. We have been suffering in our community for a very long time. And you have candidates coming now that it's election time to tell you about all the things that they have done and how connected they are, our present delegate. But apparently being a good Democrat and having all of these connections have not alleviated the suffering in our community. My name is Norma Picard Samuel. And like Einstein said, you cannot solve the problems by, how he said it, by the same level of thinking of the people that created it. You know, our delegate has been silent on a lot of issues in this community. Our community is in turmoil, and a lot of that, I feel, is directly related to the inaction of the federal government. We get all these audits, and nothing happens, so everyone is left to wonder and think why. We need to change our conversation in Washington. What we've been doing is not working. I have been working for a long time in the private industry and came up with a lot of solutions that the delegate could have followed through on, and she did not. I'm Norma Picard Samuel, and we'll get into a lot of that conversation in this forum this morning. Number 4 on the congressional ballot.
Thank you very much. Again, we want to remind our listeners that this is Decision 2012. We have our the candidates for delegate to Congress. It's all brought to you by Innovative, Color Max, Furniture Plus, Furniture Inn, MDM, Inc., T's Restaurant, some of the great sponsors making it possible. Now, for our first question to the delegate, former Senator Liston Davis.
Thank you. And, good morning and welcome to
Good morning.
all of the incumbents as well as the challengers.
Morning.
My first question, I believe, is a very serious question. This addressed to the delegate. In your opinion, what is the most pressing problem, singular, facing the territories that requires urgent congressional assistance?
In my opinion, and I think the opinion of everyone, and thank you for the question, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of everybody living in this territory, the main issue that needs to be addressed is the issue of our energy and electricity costs. One, people are going without electricity in their homes. Businesses are closing. There is no way that we can attract other businesses unless that the cost of our electricity is lowered. And it is affecting just about every aspect of our lives, whether it be our own personal health and safety, job creation, being able to get around the territory. It is affecting the cost of every commodity that we must purchase on this island. And so it is one that we are seriously addressing. This week, I have a meeting with the Secretary of Energy. Last week, I have had a meeting with Agriculture. But we did not just start these meetings, but the urgency has been increased with the recent increase in the LEAC. That is unsustainable. It is unsustainable. And if we are going to recover out of what is a serious economic crisis, the issue of energy must be addressed, and the cost of electricity, our utility, and must be addressed. And we will be addressing it. We are addressing it now. And on my seat on Energy and Commerce, on which with the vote of the people, I will have much more seniority in the coming Congress, I will be the only one who will be in the position to address this very, very critical issue.
Thank you very much. Second question will be from Senator Mondo Rocky Liburd to Mr. Redfield.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Peter, and good morning to
Good morning, Senator.
to Senator Redfield, Delegate, and former Senator Picard. Mr. Redfield, the question is this. EDC has been one of our arms of raising revenue in the territory. And you know that recently there was a 6-month place on that, which means that a lot of our people who are investing here no longer come here. Just recently, Puerto Rico now have embarked on a program that deals with EDC. And some of the discussion now has been that some of these same companies that are here, once their time is up, they may be going to Puerto Rico. What is your take as a candidate, and if elected, how would you address the EDC program so that they can again bring back the revenue that it once brought here? And how do you look at that whole picture intertwined with Puerto Rico and Congress?
Robert, we're in cutthroat competition with our neighbors, whether it is Puerto Rico under the American flag or other jurisdictions within this area. One of the major problems that we have is developing consensus in the Virgin Islands. There has been a feeling over a period of years that this program is a giveaway. And I do not believe the public has been in lockstep with the program. There's no question that there has been some abuses. But overall, it is a program that is essential. It is a moving target. As your delegate to Congress, I'm going to have to keep my eye on this program. And any time I can move federal legislation that will enhance it and bring in other stakeholders to assist us, it is critical. One of the major objectives I would have is to become a liaison to the business sector here in the Virgin Islands. And I intend to work very closely with businesses that are here. Business people like to talk to business people. It is my feeling that many of them should become ambassadors to assist me in developing business interests in the Virgin Islands. As your delegate, I will also reach out again to and build a bridge to the legislature and the executive branch. I think this is something that has been lacking. I will put on my staff somebody as a liaison to the legislature as well as the executive branch. And I don't think this has been done in the past. I don't think it's been done to the point where it is effective. Understanding what's going on in the Virgin Islands in the legislature is critical. Many times politicians that are in Washington fail to realize that. Whether they pass a resolution to assist us in certain areas, these resolutions must be taken seriously. On the executive side, it is critical that your delegate work closely with the administration. The delegate to Congress sitting to my left has not had a good working relationship with the executive branch. Two governors, there's been a lot of difficulty for them to come together on major issues.
Time.
That will not be my style. Doesn't matter who's governor.
Thank you. Next question, Senator Davis to candidate Norma Picard-Samuel.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to go back to my first question and pose that same question to Mrs. Picard-Samuel relative to what she considers to be the most pressing problem here in the Virgin Islands that will require urgent attention from Congress.
Well, to answer your question, I have to say that that is one of basically almost the only thing that I agree with the delegate on. It is our energy crisis. It has been a problem for a very long time. And in working in the private industry, when I saw the problem escalating almost 5 years ago, what I personally did was put a team together of business people and companies, and when WSTA sent out their RFP, after doing all of the research, we recommended in our answer to the RFP that we go with a combination of natural gas, wind, and solar. We have to stop running our community in crisis. The delegate should have recognized what was taking place, like I did with WSTA a long time ago. And to speak to, I'm on the Energy Committee, so I am the only one capable of solving our energy crisis now that it has escalated to where it's at today. It's sad. It's sad for our people. We have people, lots of families today living without electricity, and it's going to get worse. This should have been recognized a long time ago and work started, not now. The delegate has been on the Homeland Security Committee, and the time that she was on the Homeland Security Committee, we had close to 250 murders in our territory. So how can you tell me now, because you're sitting on the Energy Committee, you're going to solve our problems? We have to chart a new course.
Thank you. Next question to delegate from Mr. Liburd.
Congresswoman, back in 1998 or 99, I believe, when Governor Turnbull was in office, you introduced a CFO, and somewhat later on it was kind of put on the side. You subsequently introduced it now with the present administration, and it seems like you are moving forward. Tell us, what was the difference then and now, and your reasons for it, and then finally, how does that help the people of the Virgin Islands?
Well, let me just, for the record, say that I introduced it 4 times, twice in the Turnbull administration and once in the early part of the DeYoung administration, and in neither of those cases did the governor support that legislation. When the Constitutional Convention convened, given the fact that the previous 4 documents included an office such as a CFO, I felt that it was the opportunity to do it through the Constitution. That did not take place. And then came the 8% cuts and the layoffs. And I thought this was important once again. And I listened to the people of the territory. They told me that they wanted an office such as a CFO, and I responded as I respond always to my constituents. And so we introduced it. We introduced it in a little different form than before. We had found much opposition, even from the Department of Interior in the first 2 cases. And so we introduced a bill that is exactly mirrored on the current CFO of the District of Columbia, which has worked for them for over 10 years now, which just simply certifies the revenue of the government. At this point, I have the support of the administration through the Department of Interior. I am garnering support in the Senate as well. And I think it is important for the people of this territory to have transparency and accountability in government. We have been calling for that for many years, and since the Constitution did not address it, I felt it was my responsibility to bring it back and address it again. And I have a lot of support on all 3 islands from people in different walks of life for my introduction of this new CFO legislation.
Thank you very much. Next question, Senator Davis.
Thank you. At a later point in the program, I want to come back to the same question. But for Senator Redfield.
Yes, sir.
For many years, the United States has declared a very unsuccessful war on drugs. Do you believe that a declaration of a war on guns would reduce the importation of guns in the territory?
Listen, let me just say that this is an issue that we have been facing in the Virgin Islands for many years. And we're talking about our borders, our very porous. In the continental United States, on the border of Mexico, and other borders of states in the United States, on those borders, they have protections. We as Americans should be offered the same protections here in the Virgin Islands. We're Americans. If we have a soft underbelly, meaning the Virgin Islands, when you have drugs being moved from one place to another, and then all of a sudden that tightens up. Right now they're using the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. It is my position, if elected, I will insist that we have border protection. We need more federal presence in the Virgin Islands. All we are is a conduit for guns, human trafficking, and drugs. And it is compounded with our social problems here in the Virgin Islands. When you have fertile soil in the Virgin Islands, when we're going through some social problems here in the territory, and you have this stuff coming in and out of the Virgin Islands. We cannot accept it. My strategy would be as follows. The other territories are just like we are. They're having the same problems. Guam, American Samoa, the Northern Marianas, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And it will be my job to muster the support of the other territories so we don't stand alone on these major issues. When we have issues of commonality, it is essential that we come together as one. When we're in a battle, we're in a lot better battle with more of us fighting this issue. Thank God the Peace Officer Status Bill did pass the legislature. That was the one that I had a head scratcher with. And again, it makes it a lot easier in Washington, particularly with a congressperson who has oversight, whether it's through my party or the Democratic Party, to sensitize, again, the federal entities of the importance of protecting our borders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Liburd, you got the next question to candidate Norma Picard-Samuel.
Ms. Picard, if elected, what would you do different from the current delegate in addressing the people's issue in the territory? Because, you know, as an aspirant, sometimes we see things different ways and we have our own thoughts about it. But in your mind, after looking at Congress and how it works, what do you see you can do different that's going to make a big difference in the people's lives?
Well, I'll be present and accounted for. I will not be absent on major issues. I will be forward-thinking, and I do not operate when a crisis comes up. I look to the future, you know, and plan for the future. And that is not what we have been getting. We have been getting a lot of excuses. When a crisis comes up, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. Didn't you see the train coming head on to hit the Virgin Islands, or the hurricane as we know it, to prepare for it? That is our problem. Every time something happens, oh, it's not my fault because it's not my job. It is the delegate's job to bring relief to the people of the territory in any area. I will not, Congress, you know, for people to remain relevant, the delegate is trying to make Congress seem like it's this rocket science. Arithmetic and common sense, and working with any and everyone at home and in Congress. If you see a problem, you address it. The people moves legislation or policies, and if you operate within a bubble and don't let the community know, you're not going to accomplish anything. You can't sit back and wait for the administration or the Senate to do anything if you have the power and ability to bring it to the table and work it from there and have the strength of the community behind you. I am going to come back to the people. Foresight is what we need. Foresight would have solved our problems with WAPA. Foresight would have solved our problems with the guns and drugs.
Thank you very much. We want to welcome our third panelist, Dr. Leonard Richardson, a Savanero.
Yes.
We want to welcome you back to our panel. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. What we're going to do right now, we got to remind our listeners, Decision 2012, live streaming, live radio on WSTA St. Thomas is brought to you by Furniture Plus, Innovative, Furniture Inn, Color Max, MDM Production, Teas Restaurant, and we want to say thank you to all those great sponsors for making it possible. Right now, next question to the delegate from Dr. Richardson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to you too.
In the past years, during your tenureship as the delegate to the Congress, what would you say has been your most important, foresighted, and necessary recommendation, or, if you will, legislation for our people in the Virgin Islands, the singular most important?
I would say that while there were many important pieces of legislation, because we've passed almost 13 pieces of legislation affecting the territory in my tenure, the most important, I think, and far-reaching has been my work on the Affordable Care Act and the ability to bring the people of this territory as well as the other territories into the benefits that that act provides. Benefits that the people of this territory have already been enjoying in terms of our children being able to access insurance, even if they had a pre-existing disease. Our seniors getting a rebate as we begin to close a donut hole. Free preventive care without co-pays. And the tremendous increase in Medicaid. When I started out, there was $4-point-something million in federal dollars coming into the territory for this program that insures people below the poverty level. Right now, we have over $43 million because of the work that I've done on the Affordable Care Act. But I'd like to just address a couple of other things, if I might. It is not that the delegate has been sitting by while while our energy costs have been rising. 14 years ago, I visited with the WAPA board and said to them then, as I introduced some alternative energy providers, that it was time for us to begin to reduce our reliance on fossil fuel. I brought 2 subcommittees here to have a hearing in Frederiksted to highlight the high cost of energy and to, again, bring alternative energy providers. So I have been working on all of these problems, but the implementation is what happens here. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of times my opponents confuse what the job of delegate is with what the job of the local government and its agencies are.
Thank you. Next question from Senator Davis. Did we get mixed up here?
No, go right ahead.
No. This is what we're going to do. After this round, we're going to have follow-up questions, so, we could further allow the candidates to explain and get in depth. All right?
Can I ask a question? Are we allowed to respond, particularly if one of the questions was not asked of me?
Well, we're trying to do that.
You're next.
We're trying to do that.
Okay.
In a matter of fact.
Good. Senator Davis.
In a matter of fact, to address your concern immediately, I was going to ask you, based on the last statement made by the delegate, whether or not delegates' roles are different from that of a local senator. Do you clearly understand what the role of the delegate is versus local lawmakers?
I think I alluded to that in one of the questions that was asked to me earlier. There are insular issues that directly impact the decisions that should be made in Washington, and specifically this energy issue. The analogy that the train is coming down the track and you are responsible to move your constituents out of the way couldn't be truer. So you have to be proactive. You've got to constantly keep your eye on what's going on down here. This energy issue is not new. This is an issue that we've been struggling with for many years. This last increase that you got of 19%, the only difference with that, with my prediction, I thought it would be 20%. With the closure of Hovensa, with the world market as far as energy is concerned, these are very real concerns. What has to be done in Washington, even if today we decide to go to liquefied natural gas, today the decision is made by the legislature that we've got 2.5 years of dealing with this issue with high energy costs. What has to be done is we've got to look for offsets or subsidies. Now everybody will say, well, listen, that is pie in the sky and that's going to be impossible. You've got to be willing to take the difficult decisions and the difficult strategies that you're going to do. You can't be thinking about the next election. You've got to be thinking about the next generation. And in this case, because we are Americans, It is not in the best interest of the United States of America and the projection of foreign policy in this region for the U.S. Virgin Islands to be named the poorhouse of the Caribbean. It was done before and unfairly. So they have a responsibility. Our neighbors are watching us. What sense does it make for our neighbors to see the Virgin Islands collapse financially and socially and economically? And when in Washington, I will move on these areas, and I will move with absolutely no excuses and take no prisoners.
Time. Thanks you very much. Senator Liburd, you have the next question to candidate Picard Samuel.
I just had.
You just had?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what happened here with our new
panelists.
Okay. Well, so Dr. Richardson, hold on. We're going to give you that question to candidate Norma Picard Samuel. We'll get it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is interesting to note, one writer said one time ago there was a negotiation, a contract between two parties. One of the parties happened to be Jewish, and this is no attack on Hebrewism or any other denomination. The agreement was, I would like a pound of flesh, and I shall repay you when my ships come in. However, the ships did not come in, and when the lender required his pound of flesh, the borrower said, but not one drop of blood. That analogy is being made because I would like to reflect upon Hovensa and Paravensa. We no longer will be getting the drops of blood, and we no longer have the pound of flesh. Where are we, and what do you propose to rectify, if not nullify, to bring about some savings or some kind of relief for our people? The land is polluted, you know that.
You're done?
Momentarily.
Number one.
Are you familiar with the transaction?
I think I am.
Okay.
I think every Virgin Islander is very familiar with what has been taking place with Hovensa for many, many years. And that is why it's very important that you elect individual in every office with the courage of their convictions. Because 2 cents a barrel that we have received, I think that we were ripped off, to put it lightly, and then they are leaving now with all of this pollution. They said there's more oil under the ground than they had in their tanks at Hovensa. But the administration negotiated, the senators, some of them in the room, voted for that contract. I would never have agreed to that. I would have wanted more concessions. But we have to move forward. Delegate didn't find it fit to go and get monies that the people of the Virgin Islands felt that we were owed. She was working on other things. What other things, I don't know, because that was money out of our coffers. But moving forward, I have to agree that we have to have strong individual that is going to stand up, say we need our aquifers cleaned up, and we have to look at that contract very carefully to make sure that we get whatever we have to get out of it, and not to play any games. We have played games with Hovensa for a very long time, and this is why we find ourselves in the position that we find ourselves in. We cannot be friends. It's either business or friendship, and we have treated Hovensa like a family and friend, and then we got left out whole in the barrel in the end.
Thank you. Next question from Senator Liburd to our delegate.
Delegate Christensen, President Obama speaks about creating jobs, and one of the things he talked about was building bridges, highways, having monies for that. And let's bring it home. If you travel the 3 islands like I have, and just recently coming from St. Croix, you'll find that St. Croix roads are worse than all the other islands. I mean, so it clearly indicates that we need some more resources in this territory. I remember that there used to be a T21, a ICE fund, a T fund, getting somewhere around $20 million or a little more than that. My question to you is, one, do you recognize that we definitely need a larger portion of monies to come here, number one. Number two, what have you done to address that, and where are you going in the future as to how we're going to address those issues, structural issues, really. The
Absolutely.
Infrastructure must be addressed if we are going to invite people here and have a viable tourism market.
Absolutely. And I drive on the roads of St. Croix and have the experience of the potholes, so I know. I'm speaking from experience here. But we still have a surface transportation bill. And in my tenure in Congress, I have actually been able to increase the funding coming into the territory through the Highway Trust Fund to about $20 million a year. Unfortunately, my friend, Mr. Senator Redfield's colleagues in Washington held up the current surface transportation bill. We finally, before we came home in August, were able to pass a 2-year extension. As you know from your experience, it's usually a 6-year extension. But we were able to pass a 2-year extension, and that will bring $16 million to the territory in the next 2 years. And we look forward to working with our colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, because I have had that's what I have been doing in these 16 years, to increase that back again, even above the $20 million. But I do have an infrastructure bill of my own. It's called the Virgin Islands Improvement Act. It sets up a new IRA in the territory, which has the potential to bring over $50 million into the territory annually. And that money is specifically earmarked for infrastructure. As you know, the Surface Transportation Act and the federal highway funds only address our federal roads. This will be able to address some of our local roads, as well as assist in the other infrastructure needs that we must repair and improve on if we are to grow and develop economically.
Thank you. Next question from Dr. Richardson to candidate. Am I getting this wrong?
Yeah. No, you got it
okay,
right.
I'm entitled to one time. Okay. The next question will go from Senator Davis to Mr. Redfield.
Yeah. Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I'm hearing quite a bit about seniority and subcommittee membership, and it prompted me to ask this question. Senator Redfield, do you believe that relying strictly on party affiliation in Congress is more important than a delegate networking across party lines?
Well, let me speak to that.
You understand the question?
Yes. The Republican Party is the party in power in Congress right now. And that's the environment that the delegate is operating under. Her seniority at this particular point when it comes to the Republican caucus is meaningless. There's no question that you've got to reach across party lines. But when you're in a caucus and making decisions for the Virgin Islands, I would be there. Now, there's always a question, and the delegate has brought it up on many occasions, that I am a moderate, okay? I'm not a Tea Partier. That's not my position. Here in the Virgin Islands, I have proven that I can work across party lines. I've worked with 3 Democratic governors. Now, when you're making decisions up there and you're on the front line, it is essential that you reach across. However, let me address one of the issues. The delegate has said that my colleagues have been blocking her. I want to remind the delegate that she was in power when the Democrats were in power. So what did she do then? We're talking about the low-hanging fruit, which is easy. By the population, we get many things that are automatic. But when you're dealing with SSI or increasing the cap on Medicaid, when you have other issues such as the rum cover-over, these issues. When she was in power, I ask you, was this low-hanging fruit there? You should have been dealing in those areas. Let me speak very briefly to the issue of my decision with reference to Hovensa and the merger. If I had to do that decision again, I would do it over and over again. We are suffering from, or we have seen what has happened with Hovensa being out of here. 11 of us decided to vote this way. We had the same set of circumstances that we have today. And I was not going to have a crapshoot with the people of the Virgin Islands and lose that company at that point. Many people would never have been able to survive, and many of the hearts and dreams of the people would have never been attained. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question from Dr. Richardson to Ms. Picard Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Miss Samuel, is it Miss or Mrs.?
Mistress.
Mistress or Miss? Miss? Nevertheless, the point is, tell us please, what do you see as middle class, upper class, lower class, working class? In other words, it's called stratification. Do you equate the middle class with the working class or the lower class? How do you see that? And how do you think that that applies to the present structure of the capitalistic society that we have?
You know.
That's a water.
Everybody is choking. You know what I see right now here in the Virgin Islands? I ain't worrying about structure. All I'm seeing is that all of us together, middle class, upper class, whatever class you want to class yourself in, we're heading directly to the poorhouse. All of us are in this sinking ship together. People are suffering so badly here in this territory. People are burying their family members because of the healthcare system. Although the Congresswoman is touting about the millions of dollars that she's bringing in, but we're not seeing it. It's not on our tables. It's not in our hospitals. So all I see is the Virgin Islands is heading for all of us together to be poor in the poorhouse. And we have to change our way of thinking. The way that we do business in Washington must change. And this situation that we're creating, the delegate is creating to remain relevant, like Washington is this, world in itself, by itself, it just don't wash water. I have been to Washington, worked there, and worked with a lot of Republicans. Delegate need to be present and work with everyone so that we all don't go into the poorhouse and be considered lower class. This upper class, lower class, really don't do it for me. I am just trying to bring our people out of this sinking ship that we now find ourselves in because of neglect.
Thank you. Again, we're live on Lucky 13, WSTA St. Thomas, VI Decision 2012, live radio on WSTA, live streaming on www.lucky13wsda.com and focusvi.com. Our candidates present right now for the delegates race, Delegate Donna Christensen, Mrs. Norma Picard Samuel, and Mr. Holland Redfield. We want to thank our super sponsors for making it possible. They include Innovative, Color Max, Furniture Plus, IQ Events, T's Restaurant, MDM Inc., Choice Wireless, John's Auto, Global Training Center, and Jimmy & Sons Towing. Our panelists for today's presentation, former Senator Liston Davis, educator Dr. Richardson, and former Senator and Senate President Alamndo Rocky Liburd. Again, we'll change it around a little bit so different persons could ask, have a chance to ask questions to all our candidates. We're also going to have a follow-up. With that, we'll increase the time an extra minute, and we're going to try to just get into depth as far as the subject matters. We're going to start now with Alamndo Rocky Liburd. His question will go to Mrs. Picard Samuel, candidate.
Ms. Senator Picard.
Norma is good, you know.
I earlier asked the delegate about this T21, or it used to be ICE fund, and the fact about infrastructure. How do you perceive your role in trying to bring more funds to the territory? What it is you have in your plans that will maximize what we're given? I've heard you said that what we get, we probably was going to get anyhow. So how do you maximize that in terms of your priority issues if elected?
Well, you know, what I've found in going to Washington and working in Washington and speaking with the powers that be there, a lot of our problem is information. If you don't know, you can't lend a helping hand. You can't do what is right, okay? And the delegate seems so comfortable with taking no for an answer, you know? No, and then we move on. It's not the right time, you know? And then when we get the money, she doesn't follow the money. She may say, oh, it's interfering with the administration. But it is a delegate's responsibility to go and lobby to get that money. So how could you not follow the money when you get it to make sure that it's being used for the intended purpose, and then go back to try to get more? You have to be able to justify what you have been given in order to say, listen, this was not enough, and be able to state your position and prove your point and lobby for it. You know, it's not ended. Your job is not ended when the money is given. You have to follow the money, and this is why you not only have to be able to work in Washington, you have to be able to work with whatever administration is in and whatever legislative branch that you have there to deal with. You have to follow the money and see your job through. It's not done when you're given the money, because you then have to go back to justify either getting more or maybe going for something else. And I just don't get it. Follow the money. Make sure it's being used correctly.
Thank you. Next question from Senator Davis to... you want...
Go right ahead. Let me hear what you're going to say.
No, well, you could do a follow-up if you want.
Yeah, I want to point my finger towards the delegate based on what candidate Picard has just mentioned. Do you agree with her? Of course, the answer is no.
You want to start fight now?
No, I'm not fighting.
No,
well,
but anyway,
I
don't agree.
The concerns are very serious.
The concerns,
Yes.
First of all,
and in some instances damaging.
My staff, the members of the House, both Republican and Democrat, members of the Senate and the President will tell you that I have never been a person that took no for an answer. Never. I still am not a person that takes no for an answer. The question was asked about the CFO, for example. That was actually an attempt to follow the money. There were many times, as everyone knows, when funds were going back from education, from health, and from the different agencies. So the CFO was an attempt to follow the money. And yes, it sort of overstepped into the local purview, but it was a temporary position for which the people, if my bill passed, still have the ability in referendum to decide whether they continue or not. But both of my opponents here were senators. They have the direct responsibility for seeing that the funds that come to the territory are spent correctly. And so they also bear that responsibility. And we continue to ask, as I pointed out, we increased the surface transportation or the highway fund. We increased it for all of the territories. In this crop here, there have been cuts across the board for every agency. And so we took a cut for the next 2 years. But I have plans, and I have the ability, the seniority, the influence in both parties to make sure that when it is reauthorized, that money goes up and the territory gets an increase in their surface transportation funding.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Next question from Dr. Richardson to candidate Redfield.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is interesting to note that you have worked here as a senator in the local legislature, and also that you are aspiring to the position of delegate. My question is, and it's going to be very short, from the pages of literature, another person said, you must be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. Are you so committed? Will you be willing to do that?
Dr. Richardson, this was not an easy decision to run for Congress.
Good.
When you're out of public life for quite a few years, you have to really sit back and you've got to think and reflect. One of the major concerns that I had was that I could get elected. And was I ready to accept this responsibility? And I am ready to accept this responsibility. This community has been good to me. I believe that I was very effective when I was in the legislature. And it's time for me to roll up my sleeves. I am not going to make a career of being in Congress. I'm going to make decisions based on the next generation, not the next election. I also looked at the composition of Congress being Republican. And I know in many lights, Republicans are treated, or here in the territory are not understood. It's my responsibility to build that bridge. And me in the Congress, as a Republican, dealing with my Republican colleagues and sensitizing them to the problems we're having is a key position. Yes, I'll reach across party lines. At a time when you are delegate and you are in power, like the delegate was, that was the time to throw bouquets of flowers over to the Republicans. I always sensed that there was an antagonism between the two with reference to press releases coming out of the delegate's office. So when you're in a position and you're in power, you always get closer to your enemy than you are your friends. And this is something that's been lacking. In other words, I'm talking about political acuity. Political acuity is something that you have at the base of your stomach. You understand it, and you know how to move correctly with it. This is something that has been lacking, and the delegate has been more reactive than proactive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question from Senator Liburd to Delegate Donna Christensen.
Delegate Christensen, the discussion here has centered around your role.
Yes.
Let me just ask you this, because there's a lot of talk in the community about, let's put it in perspective. First of all, you don't have a vote in Congress. Some people believe your position is a lobbyist. You're a chief lobbyist, really. The question is, you talk about seniority and party affiliation. How does that work for us? Because if the opposite party is in power, then you have no power, all right? So it behooves me to believe that you must be not just a party member alone, but you got to be able to move about in different areas if you are going to be successful in those times that you are not in power. So how do you do that? What have you done that demonstrate that you can and you have crossed the aisles and have gotten results? And do you agree with the other candidates about that?
Well, you know, I've even worked with Senator Redfield on issues before the Congress, especially on appointments to federal positions.
Hold on 1 minute. Do you agree that your role is more or less a lobbying role?
No, I don't agree.
Okay,
that
tell us why.
I do not agree that my role is a role of lobbyist. Lobbyists come to me because I'm a legislator, and I am able to address their concerns if I agree with them in legislation. That is something that they cannot do. I work with the governor's lobbyists. Whether we get along with the governor or don't get along with the governor is immaterial to me. I work for the people of this territory, and I work with their lobbyists. So I don't agree. We do not have a vote, but party affiliation becomes extremely important, as do the caucuses that we belong to, because we get the support from our caucuses. That makes your committee assignment even more important, because you are able to influence. And I'm on the committee that has the broadest authority of any. Now, we have not been under a Democratic majority all of the time that I have been in Congress. 10 years under Republican majority, and 8 years under Republican president. And yet, I was able to increase highway trust fund money. And yet, I was able to increase the rum cover over and bring it up to the $13.25 and add an additional more than $15 million to our treasury every year. And yet, I was able to pass legislation to, as we worked on, to bring the authority to the government of the Virgin Islands to address property taxes. So I have proven that I have worked across the aisle. I got a birthday letter from Speaker Boehner calling me his colleague and friend. I've been appointed to a special task force by one of my Republican subcommittee chair.
Right.
I have proven that I can work across the aisle and be successful under any administration.
Thank you very much, Delegate. We're at 1 hour mark. We just want to say again, we're live on Lucky 13, WSTA St. Thomas. We're streaming live on focusvi.com and Lucky13WSTA.com. Our candidates on stage, candidate Norma Picard Samuel, candidate Holland Redfield, and candidate Delegate Donna Christensen. We have our panelists, which includes former Senate President Alamndo Rocky Liburd, educator Dr. Richardson, and former Senator Liston Davis. Moving right along as we go to the last hour, our next question comes from Senator Davis.
Again, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Quite interesting. I know when you are the incumbent, the challenges are going to be coming after you. Absolutely. And therefore, you have prepared yourself to defend yourself. But let me ask you this question to Senator Redfield. The Virgin Islands over the last couple of years has experienced a very high unemployment rate prior to the closing of events. If elected to Congress, how would you go about attempting to reduce the high unemployment rate in the Virgin Islands as it relates to job creation?
Senator, let me just say this is a complex issue. And that's not meaning I'm going to avoid it, because I'll hit it head on. You have certain issues that have to be dealt with here in the Virgin Islands to start with. You have an issue of tax reform that has been sitting with a great big dusty book, where we got to move away from this gross receipts, either go to a value-added tax or we got to go to a sales tax. Very serious issues. So when you're up there trying to attract businesses, whether you're working through federal programs to get assistance here or more capital in the Virgin Islands for investment, you've got to understand that there's a responsibility that has to be taken and borne here in the Virgin Islands. I've always said that it is essential for your delegate to build that bridge. In other words, when there are issues down here that seem to be a little bit touchy or politically sensitive, you got to be prepared to jump in the middle of it and get involved. Let me speak to this relationship. I've had a good relationship with the delegate. And what has always amazed me as a delegate being a Democrat, and historically most of the governors have been Democrats, there's been this tension between these two offices. And it has not been constructive. It was to the point in many cases I was to set up a meeting. And I insisted that the delegate be in that meeting. And you would have a governor saying, she doesn't need to be there. Excuse me. Even if I do not get along with the delegate or not, it is a responsibility of both these parties to show one face up there. This kind of childishness that may take place in the Virgin Islands with reference to the tension between the governor's office and the delegate is unacceptable. And it is a responsibility of both parties to put these differences aside and move in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. And I will do that. I don't care whether there's a communist as a governor of the Virgin Islands. I will work with that individual, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or whatever they are.
What we're going to ask for right now from Dr. Richardson would be a follow-up question to candidate Redfield. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There is an African proverb which states, when the elephants battle, the grass suffers. Mm-hmm. And that particular proverb is most apropos to the Virgin Islands. Our people are hurting. Our people are in dire straits. Tell me unequivocally, in clear, concise, and simple language so our people can understand, what do you see as the solution?
I think it goes to the role of all of our politicians, whether they're in the Senate or in Congress or as a chief executive. It's not about us individually. It's about the people we serve. And you have to have the political maturity to